I'm from the Marshall Islands, which is one of the most impacted places by climate change, and it's a series of islands, and it's very, very narrow, so like typhoons and hurricanes and storms like that are very, very scary, and like, there's nowhere to go. Basically, so that's why there's a lot of climate refugees from the Marshall Islands that are moving into the United States. But I sort of knew about that, but I wasn't really aware how bad it was until I'm also Jewish, so until I had my bat mitzvah, and we're supposed to do a mitzvah project, which is something it's a good deeds project basically, and I did mine based on the Marshall Islands and raised money to get a community center there and solar panels in the Marshall Islands, and then it sort of went from there where I was doing more climate activism work because I realized, over the years I've realized how bad it's gotten and how bad it's going to get because the islands are basically drowning essentially, and so then I got involved with Time for the Planet, which my mom co-coordinates now, and basically it trains you to become climate activists through one-day free academies, and it basically teaches kids about climate change and how to talk about climate change with your peers and adults as well, because a lot of what I do now is like speak to adults and kids about climate change, so I'm sort of like teaching both sides about it and raising more awareness, and that's actually because of the work that my brother and I do, that's how we got involved in the lawsuit, and from there we've done a lot of trainings and workshops and led a bunch of, and also gone to conferences and gotten to meet very important people and work more on this issue.
My sister and I kind of started the same way, basically, but my sister's adopted from the Marshall Islands, I'm from Chicago, so there's a big climate change threat there, really, right now, but I guess I got involved kind of around the time my sister was learning about the Marshall Islands and how sea level rise could impact the Marshall Islands, really affect them in a really negative way. And it was when I was in like around second grade, so it wasn't, I didn't really think of it as something big or something that I could work on that would affect anything because I was a second grader. And then we got involved in Time for the Planet up in Seattle. And now my mom is the U.S. program director. And we said, yeah, it's about youth empowerment and how youth can talk to other youth, mainly about climate change and about other issues as well. So it's motivating youth, it's youth motivating other youth to take on climate action and stuff, because we usually get kids that want to do something but don't know how to, and it also tends to be easier to talk to someone or learn from someone who's your age. And so we figured that having kids learn from other kids would be a more effective way, and the kids would probably get more out of it also.
So for me, growing up in downtown Portland, I was never really, I wasn't involved with the outdoors as much. Of course, I could always go hike to Forest Park or go to skate park that I wanted to, but I never had someone that would actually take me out and really learn about my surroundings and learn about why it all mattered. I didn't really realize any of this until I went to outdoor school as a kid, and I spent a week there. I tried to get kicked out. I remember trying to pretend to fight a kid to get kicked out, but then on the last day I realized that it was a really beautiful experience, and that I never wanted to leave. And then as I got older, and sophomore year, I went and I was a student leader there, and I got to teach kids. about native animals that were around our campsite. There was a certain connection that I made with those kids that I knew couldn't happen outside of outdoor school, and I was able to get them really pumped for learning about the environment and learning about how to be understanding with one another, and I think that was a really amazing experience for me. And in the summer, I actually was able to go out to Toronto Creek as an instructor there, and for a lot of the other programs that would come out, there was a camp also which focused mainly with African American and Latino children, and these kids never really were able to go on hikes or go camping or anything like that.
What would you think are the most important things, supports that would be helpful or more helpful?
Well, I would say that number one, if for a kid that you know, for example, like grandkid or your child or something, is to bring them to stuff, like invite them to stuff, because then they'll feel more included and they'll be more willing to get involved into other things, and also offering them to go to youth-related things, because I mean, inviting them to like rallies and stuff is fun and great. That's usually there doesn't really a big youth presence, and so finding or starting like a youth panel or like a youth camp or youth-related thing that they can invite their friends, they can come, and well, overall that would be fun, and also to bring them places, because a lot of my friends would love to do the stuff that I'm doing, or like go to like the parent academies that my sister and I lead. But a lot of times they can't really get there, and so try to be flexible.
I was chairing the Indigenous Knowledge Sessions for the Global Summit on Climate Change. And we had people from 80 nations, and all indigenous people. And they concluded that we do not have climate change, we have climate crisis. Number two, that governments will not act fast enough. And number three, they'll be like trying to stop a steamroller that's already started, coming downhill and trying to stop. Given that, what do you think?
And that analogy is pretty terrifying, but and it makes sense that people call it climate crisis as well, because I mean, there's like a lot of arguments on like what's causing climate change the most, and it's crashing, and basically causing a lot of arguments between people. And it makes sense to me why it's called the climate crisis, just because like it's separating a lot of people and causing a lot of making a lot of opinions that are making it harder for us to work faster on this issue.
Climate crisis. So I actually prefer to call it climate crisis because it's about a whole bunch of different things that climate change causes, like refugee crisis, where people will have to move from their places that we used to live because of drought, or it's just become unlivable, too hot, and other stuff. And then there is also economic problems that will be caused by climate change. And so crisis really encompasses everything. Climate change makes it seem like it's just the climate that's only going to be affected. And then the second one on the government is if you do enough. I think that the government has the potential to do enough and to fix everything, obviously. But right now, with the current administration, it doesn't seem like any of that really is feasible or should happen. And that's why like young people, actually everyone, and youth need to start working on it and like doing like their local governments, because that's a lot easier and faster to work with than going straight to the courts, which is, we're going to the courts to start something, to do something, but it's going to take a while, and it has already taken a while. But if you want to see some pretty fast changes, like city councils and county councils is the best way to go. And the third one, okay, so the climate crisis being a steamroller and trying to stop it down to a nice big hill. I think that it is possible because, I mean, change doesn't, everyone says this, but change doesn't start from the top down, it goes from the bottom up, which is very true. People say it all the time. But I think that also, my sister, my mom and I, earlier this summer went to an Al Gore training, the Climate Reality Project training up in Bellevue. And he talked about how the civil rights movement, one of the biggest movements in U.S. history, only involved about 3.5% of the United States population. And so, to bring about that big of a change, they only need 3.5%. And I'm pretty sure there's about 3.5% of people who are willing to do something, and do something, not even a whole bunch of stuff, but it can also range from a whole bunch of stuff, like talking to city councils, switching to solar, or some other renewable thing, or filing lawsuits. We only need 3.5% to make change. And so I think that is very possible that we can stop that steamroller.
I didn't answer the part about the government's not doing enough, and I think, I mean, they could, but they choose not to. And I mean, we sat in the courtroom, like for our first hearing, we sat in the courtroom listening to the government, the Obama administration. I mean, now we're seeing the Trump administration, but at first the Obama administration teaming up with the 650 oil and gas companies, and basically we're sitting there listening to them both tell the judge that our future doesn't matter. And so,
Excuse me, that the future does not matter?
yeah.
Is that what you said?
The kids' future.
That's what they were told.
Wow.
Where do you guys get your news and your information? Where do you go for informing yourself about these issues and just the issues in general?
Every Monday and Friday here at NEA, the entire school, we go down to our gymnasium and we smudge. And our principal, she would talk to us about all these different situations that are coming up. Last year, she talked a lot about the protests that were happening, and then the environmental march that happened in Portland also. And then we were asked to go down there to actually perform for them and sing a song. So it's usually from my schools where I get all my information from the teachers that are out there listening and want to share with the students that listen also.
I'm just curious, as important as climate change is, we can focus our lives on that. What else worries you?
I mean, I do think of other things besides climate change, but I mostly think that climate change is the thing that will actually kill me and could destroy my future. So I focus most of my attention on that. But I do think about racial injustice. Sometimes I think about LGBTQ rights. I think about immigrant rights, and there's a lot of this stuff we actually talk about in my social studies class, so it's kind of in front of my mind a lot of times.
I mean, my brother and I are worried about the same things, but I mean, when he says climate change might come, that like is pretty accurate because my brother has asthma and like there was like pretty toxic. We couldn't really breathe the air for a while in Oregon and in a lot of places in Oregon, so like that worried me.
For myself, it would, I try to focus on creating really inclusive environments, not just at camp, but here at my school also, because the school has a lot of kids that are misrepresented. A lot of these kids don't have a lot of what other students may have at other places, like a good home, understanding person there for them. So I try to focus a lot on mental health because I've struggled with depression and anger. So I try to just be a listening ear for those, I guess.
What kind of reaction your peers at school or other organizations in the community, what kind of reaction they have to what you're doing and your advocacy for this climate issue?
A lot of my peers are like pretty much in support of me. A lot of, well, my teachers are in support of me, like they brag about it in classes, like, copy Nico, like, her transcript is gonna be full, like, but like in terms of homework, they're like no mercy, because I like skip school a lot for activism events and conferences, and like especially now that the lawsuit is this year, like the official trial, February 5th, 2018. Basically, like I might miss like 4 days of school, but like I'm thinking about more, so I hope they'll like have some mercy on me. Yeah, a lot of my friends are just like, oh cool, and it's like, Nico, bring me to one of your marches, I want to go. And then, I mean, at first when we were suing the Obama administration, some people were just like, yo, why are you suing my man Obama? But like, but I mean, they're in support of me, and a lot of the grown-ups I know, they're just like, so, do you just want to get into a good college, or do you really want to do this? But like, I really want to do this, and it's been really great for me that I'm doing this, and it gives me a lot of purpose to move on with this movement.
So it's because we go to the same school, we're like less than a year apart. We have the same friends, really. So yeah, our friends are very supportive of what we do, and they're always interested in getting into some activism things. Like ISB, our school has an activism club, and which is led by my social studies teacher, and he gives the students some ways that they can like listen to speakers. Like last year, some of the students went to see Bill McKibben when he came to the Rochester Concert Hall, and he invited some students to come to when Naomi Klein spoke at Cedar Hills Pals. And that was pretty great seeing them there, but all of them are pretty on board with it.
Well, Maya is such a tiny school that I think we only have about, I want to say 100 kids already, so we all know each other very well, and they, a lot of the staff support what I do, and a lot of them actually fought to get me into either China Creek or last year I was with the Bureau of Environmental Science, or Bureau of Environmental Services, sorry, and my science teacher actually filled out everything to get me in there and didn't let me know at all, but they're always pushing for me to get more involved with child care and environmental work. So.
Is for any of you who've been educated in the standard Western way and then in the non-Western way, I would love to hear a comparison of the two.
So when I was starting out, I always went to large public schools. And when I started as a freshman, I was actually going to Reynolds High School, and that was a school of 3,000 students, and I was homeless at the time too, so it was really hard for me. And I always felt like I was just a number on a piece of paper to them. I never felt like I mattered to them. I felt like I was there just to be in the class for a certain amount of time, and they wanted me gone, and that was it. And I never built a connection with any of my teachers, so I never actually learned. And it wasn't until I dropped out of high school and I was really having a hard time in my life, and I found out about NAIA. And I came, and the classes were a lot smaller. You had an actual connection with the teachers, and there was even a teacher that, for the first time in my life, she told me that she believed in me, and she loved me, and that she saw my full potential in life. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm still here today. I've thought about dropping out because of living situations. I'm still facing homelessness, and I'm still battling all that, but I think the reason is because I had that teacher here to tell me that I love you, and that you're going to succeed in life as long as you put the effort into it. And it's a lot different here in NAIA. We smudge every week. We start out with good intentions, and we sit together, and we're there, and it's a lot different here. I've learned a lot, not just about math or science or English or anything like that, but about myself and about how to interact with other human beings. And I really appreciate that I have this space, and I really want to work on my life to create more spaces like NAIA, because there are thousands of other kids that are like me, that have a voice that's unheard and that don't have that space to go. So I don't know if that answers your question completely at all, but I guess that's my take on it.
I also want to say that I'm really proud of you for taking this action, for being courageous. I have grandchildren, we have grandchildren, and I sat down with them one day and I started telling them, like you made the point of like understanding who you are, and I shared with my grandchildren about the trees, I shared with them about our environment, our water, and the fight that's ahead of them, and how we always pray for our 7 generations ahead. And my grandson said, I always hear the older people say that, but he said, they're not really teaching us anything. So I said, what is it that would help you? And he said, the truth. And he said, the reality is, he said, that a whole lot of adults don't respect the younger generation. He said they have this idea that we're delinquents, we're drug addicts, we're, thugs. And he said that's the expectation that the adults have of the younger people. So he said it would be good to know the truth. But my question is, do you feel like you have a lot of respect from the adult community for what you're doing?
I would say yes, because I usually surround myself with adults that do support what I do. But I remember going to this one event, and I told a woman that I was part of the lawsuit, and she said something about she said it in a very, not very condescending way, but her tone kind of sounded like that, and she was like, I don't know, I think ignorance is bliss. And I was just I looked at her and just turned away, because I wasn't going to talk to someone as ignorant as that.
I would say that I feel like starting out, it was the adults were like, oh, let's give these kids a chance, but it wasn't as serious as it is now, because there's a lot more kids now doing stuff. But now it's if you want your message to get through, then you should have youth, because now people are the youth actually matter, and they're growing up in these conditions, and so they should have just as big a voice.
So I've never really had any sort of, I've been talked down to, I guess, is what I would say. I've always been, I feel pretty mature for my age, so I feel like I've been setting an example for other students that are around my school, so I've never really had anyone talk to me in that sort of way where I didn't feel like I was being respected, or, and I've never felt like I was set to be a thug or a kid that never cared, you know. So, but I do definitely see that as an expectation for a lot of youth, and I see it at my school a lot too, which is really hard because I know these kids and I know what they're going through sometimes, you know. So it's a little tough. But I think it's also amazing to prove people wrong and to prove them that you aren't just a drug addict, or you aren't just some kid that doesn't care. You know, I think it's amazing to show them that you are able to do amazing things with your life and with your energy that you put out into the world. So
the question I have for the panel is, you guys give me hope. I've been in this climate environmental issue for 20 years. You guys give me hope. What gives you hope? Not just on climate, but just when you look at where we're at in the world in general, what are the things that make you feel hopeful?
you know, that question is kind of hard for me because for a long time in my life I never actually had hope. And it wasn't until I found my best friend, Nate, at this school actually, and was taken in by his family that I found that. And I guess what gives me the most hope in life is my new family that I have. And they give me every day, and the strength that they give me just by being there. So that's what gives me hope.
Something that gives me hope. Well, a lot of things do, but I think one of the most impactful things is when I see other youth that are getting involved in the climate action world and social justice in general. And specifically my friends actually, because I originally, like when I started out this climate stuff, I tried to get them to come to stuff, but then I eventually kind of stopped inviting them because they just couldn't come sometimes or they didn't want to. But now I'm seeing some more of our friends at rallies and marches and city council meetings and doing other things and getting more of our friends on board. And seeing a lot more youth also doing a lot of work is what gives me hope.
I agree with my brother. I really like seeing youth speaking up more at city council meetings and putting themselves out there and like taking time out of their lives to be at a march or a rally or just being there in support of others or just to be there. But most specifically my friends, because when I started in this movement, I was sort of shy about it and didn't want to tell everybody because I thought like a lot of my friends would be like, oh, that's you. And then I have I thought that when I started being more open about it, I thought that I'd have to make some more friends because usually when I have a friend that doesn't really agree with a lot of the stuff I do, and now that I'm super into climate activism, that's pretty much all I talk about. So I thought I'd have to make more friends, but I get to keep my old friends, and I do make new friends. So seeing my friends be a part of it and supporting me gives me a lot of hope. Thank you.
My question is, in your activism, what role do indigenous rituals and prayers play?
My family is very, very involved in our Jewish community in Southwest Portland, and our whole congregation is like a social activism frenzy. Everyone is basically a member of 350 PDX. You can see at marches, you can see our congregation holding up a banner in Panama, Portland, walking with 10 people from our congregation, and a whole bunch of rallies and marches. And the whole environment is very, very supportive. And on Shabbat morning, after we read the Torah, some of the members of the congregation give droshes, which is like a quick teaching on the Torah portion that was just read. And a lot of the times they involve climate change, and they involve social justice and social action. And as a part of my drosh that I did on my bar mitzvah a couple of years ago, I talked about climate change, and a lot of my community thought that was really great. And also the church that we shared space with, that used to be there, their pastor wanted me to give a sermon on Sunday, the day after, based on my drosh that I gave the day before that on my bar mitzvah. So I guess my religious and climate change work really does intertwine.
To answer your question, sometimes we go to marches or rallies, and there are we'll meet at a lake or something, and there will be an indigenous ceremony, and they I guess heal the water, I think, and there's a moment of silence while it's happening, and I really enjoy it, and it's all calm.
So I guess growing up, I lived with my mother who's white, and I never knew about my indigenous background at all. So I guess really learning more about your own identity would help, because I know that not knowing who you are has, or for at least myself, has really impacted the way I acted in life. And it wasn't until I came to NAIA and started learning more about my culture and more about my people that I started realizing the connections between it all. And we, like I said, my drum group, we opened for the Environmental March in Portland because we sat together and we decided to write a song, and we went up to the elders who are here at NAIA and we asked for their permission to have this song as the school song, and then we were asked to perform it at the Environmental March because we were told that they were tired of having a lot of rich white people speak, and they wanted to have some young native youth to express our thoughts on all of it. And I'm honored to be in a group with a lot of young urban natives that really care about preserving the environment. And so that answered your question.
If the lawsuit is not successful, what do you do next?
Well, I usually don't really think of if it's not successful. I usually just say, instead of saying if we win, I usually say when we win, because we can afford to lose. But if that happens, obviously I'll be really sad and really bummed out. Actually devastated probably, but I'd still push through and try really, really hard because my future's at stake, and I mean I shouldn't stop because of the lawsuit if that happens.
Yeah, if you're not finished.
I would probably do the same situation as Miko, but then I would try to start it back up again with some new points to why our lives are in danger. Because, that's on different. So I would probably try to start that up again, like restart the case, back to square one. But since we may have already done that again, or I think once, it'll probably go a lot faster. So yeah, I guess that's what I would do.
So you're not a part of that? So this is an interesting question that you asked, because you're not a part of that, so you're going to keep chugging along. So do you want to comment that in the context of your question?
I guess it would be just to talk more to the students at my own school, because none, other than the people that are in our drumming group, none really are focused on anything. So I guess figuring out how to sit down with all the students in our school and figure out a way to help out and to show our support.
Hi, my name is Isaac Burgun. I'm 15 years old, and I am one of 21 youth plaintiffs in the federal court case Kelsey Juliana et al. Versus United States et al. The concept of this court case is to sue the federal government for violating youth rights to life, liberty, and property by allowing the promotion, extraction, and use of fossil fuels. This case has been going on for 3 years, and we have finally reached the trial date of February 5th, 2018. We would like as many people as we can to come down to the federal courthouse at the start of the trial day, so that we can have a whole bunch of rally and support. I do a lot of activism with my whole family. My sister and I do a lot of our things together. She's also a plaintiff on the lawsuit. And my mom is also a program coordinator for this United Nations program called Plant for the Planet. And Plant for the Planet is a United Nations nonprofit program which trains youth and young kids to become climate justice ambassadors through one-day academies where they learn about climate change, climate injustice, and public speaking skills that they can use to convey their message, that they can use at like city council meetings, rallies, or give testimonies, which is what I have used, which is what I've done. Right now, I am the current youth or children's board president for Plant for the Planet. My sister is a member of the youth global board, and so Plant for the Planet. One of the main goals of Plant for the Planet is to plant trees, and our goal is to plant 150 trees per person around the world, so we can get down to the safe level of CO2 in our atmosphere, which is below 350 parts per million. And so Plant for the Planet has already planted 15 billion trees, and we are trying to get to our goal of 1 trillion trees by the end of the century, which seems like a very far away, but it's actually very, very fun and very, very easy. Some of the ways that we do this is, other ways that we combat climate change is through fighting poverty with climate change. We tax carbon and tax the fossil fuel companies that get subsidies from the government to extract fossil fuels. We remove those, and that money gets put back into the communities which are the most affected by those companies. That's what I do around climate activism and empowering youth.